Welcome to the Code Monkey Podcast Season 3, Episode 3, where the local time is always 3:45. Computers are stupid, and Mars would be less boring if we added magnets. I'm your host, Kevin Giese, and joining me remotely while on the first stop of his round-the-world tour, all the way from Barrow, Alaska, it's Alex Bragdon. Alex, how are you doing?
Always daytime.
Well, and 3:45, no less.
Right, yeah. Well, I don't really know where you got the 3:45 from. I don't think it's 3:45 in any time zone anywhere. But
I think it was just based off of the angle of the sun off the horizon and, outside your window in sunny Barrow, Alaska.
Well,
the northernmost city of all of Alaska, all of you.
I understand.
States, nay, all of the world. That's not accurate. But
no, that is not accurate. But I understand all the accurate bits. Okay, I'm just saying that you must have been misaccurate in your calculation of the time, because my atomic clocks disagree with your primitive angle calculation methods, and I'm going to go with the atomic clocks.
Geometry is better than atoms, Alex.
I disagree.
It is far more pure.
Do you know what makes the EM drive work? It's not
atomic
geometry.
Decay. Atomic decay is probability, Alex. Geometry is real. It's certainty.
Yes, just as certain as the EM drive exists. I'm glad we're back on this topic.
How are we back on this topic already?
I don't know. I just decided it was a good time to bring it up.
Oh, okay. What news on the EM drive front, Alex?
There is none. I check it weekly, just in the vain hope that someone will have built one. I follow these forums of people attempting to build it, and they'll post data that has no labeled axes and just random bobbly bits and pieces of wood suspended from a ceiling with a microwave strapped to it.
This is doing a ton for your credibility, Alex.
Someday someone will figure it out. I'm confident NASA's at least doing some sort of legitimate science behind it.
Okay.
But the NASA spaceflight forums are not necessarily the most rigorous of testing environments.
Oh, okay. Well, actually, it has been a slow news week, not just for the EM drive, but for everything.
Well, it's not been a slow news week. It's just been dominated by things we're not going to talk about.
Well, exactly. I mean, because we're recording this a little bit later a day later than we usually do. And I was looking for show note topics earlier in the week. Didn't find anything. Was scrambling to try and find stuff today. I was like, nope, there's nothing. There's politics. And, no. I don't want to have to edit out all of
the podcast.
Oh, man, editing that one episode. Where really we didn't say anything too egregious, but we were just talking about why I don't like to talk about politics and why you think it's okay to talk about politics.
Right.
And still, there was so many, I think it was 300 different edits, and so it was more 3 times as many edits as
300 edits. Holy.
No, it wasn't 300. Cow. It was something like 800 and something.
800?
It was something. Yeah.
Whoa. Wahoo.
For an hour and 20 minutes of audio. So, fantastic. Yeah, I think we probably just avoid, oh man, so much politics.
So many politicals.
Which is, I don't know, I feel like...
We're at the solar max of the 4-year political cycle, and we're drowning.
Well, it's weird though, right? Because we've co-opted, because there's the political side of politics, but then there's also just this is kind of serving as a surrogate for entertaining news right now.
Yeah.
That, instead of having fluffy, fun news stories or things to talk about that are fun or cool or exciting, politics just is I'm going to do that job right now.
I'm going to do everyone's job.
Exactly. And so politics is hey, you know what? It's if you had the nightly news, good evening, our top story, politics. Next up, our in-depth, cutaway thing with the interviewer person about politics. And now to sports. Politics! And what's the weather look like? Politics! Thank you and good night. That is what the news is right now. And man, does it make it hard to find anything to talk about on this podcast.
Which is why I think it's important that we all get involved with the political process in ways that are interesting to talk about, Kevin.
Yeah, so do you want to read this, or should I actually I should mention I started writing these intros for the podcast. I never asked you if you wanted to write them or read them. I just sort of assumed. I was like, nope, I'm just going to do this.
You're the better writer between the two of us.
That is so not the case.
You've written a book. That must be the case. You have a book on your shelf that you have written. I cannot claim such a thing.
So has Matophobia. Anyway.
Oh, okay. He's the basic nothing? What is he the baseline?
So Matophobia, who is the social media manager for Nerdcubed on YouTube, but also a wonderful YouTuber and wonderful person in his own right, but also someone who is a bit language prone.
Yes.
Decided on a one-off to release a book on the Kindle store that was just a scripted set of profanity in various sequences.
I remember him having a book. I didn't realize that was it.
Yes, yeah. So that was is it called Inside the Mind of Matophobia? I believe it's no longer for sale, but I think he sold like about 100 copies. I believe I'm on the back jacket.
Why?
Under the list of like endorsements. My endorsement reads something like re-endorsement must decline, thanks anyway. And yeah.
Oh.
So, anyway, it's entertaining. But the point is he had a book too. So the fact that you have a book doesn't mean...
Yeah, but you had a legitimate book.
Well,
it had a story.
I didn't script it.
It wasn't just automatically generated.
See, but in some ways that should count against me, though, because his way was far more efficient.
Kevin, just accept that you've written a book and are therefore probably a better writer, and let's move on.
We can move
on.
I would be interested to know, have there been any Markov chains that just read the entire Library of Congress and try and produce novel-length works?
I doubt it.
So Markov chains, for people who are not familiar, are generally the things that you'll see behind a bunch of Twitter bots, where basically you look at a word and you look at the frequency of words that come after it, over a set of things that already exist that humans have written, and then you use that to sort of do predictive. What is the next thing that you would say? Sort of in the same way that sometimes your phone's autocorrect or whatever will just sort of predict the next word that you would type. And that's the exact same process. But it's generally restricted to things like tweets, or occasionally you see articles, but those tend to be more iffy. I'd be really interested to know if someone's like, oh, we're going to have a Markov book.
Kevin, are we talking about like programming things? I don't know if we're allowed to do that.
I apologize, everybody. This is very inappropriate.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we were clear on that.
Well, yeah, no, it's because I pimped out. Well, we pimped out, no less, the Code Monkey podcast on my YouTube channel. Right. So far, your YouTube channel has done nothing for this show. I just want to...
Nope.
But I did receive a comment by someone who I believe also listens to the podcast, but she mentioned that she was sharing the podcast with her programmer husband, and I went, oh God, that's not our audience at all. We are totally not qualified for that.
Well, we're not we might be qualified, but we just choose not to exhibit. You might be qualified.
I am certainly not qualified.
We both have degrees.
Well, yes. Well, I have a lesser degree.
I don't know if that's true. What is this Kevin just like downs on himself the episode?
Well, yes. I'm gearing up to getting angry about other things, but we'll get to that later. In the meantime, you mentioned something about getting involved in the political process, so you pasted a very long blurb of text, which one of us is going to have to read, and I'm not sure who exactly that's supposed to be.
It's supposed to be you, because you're the better writer, so you'd better emphasize.
I didn't write it.
I know, neither did I.
I suspect I know who did, but we'll leave that person anonymous. They can just go down in history as the unnamed Martian hero. But however wonderful our home planet may be, we the people cannot deny that Earth will not be able to support us indefinitely. Be it at nature's hand or the hand of our own ignorance and greed, our current home will one day be destroyed. It is fortunate, however, that our nearest planetary neighbor could provide so bountifully for us if we chose to invest in it. There's supposed to be a comma. That's not supposed to be two sentences. That's If the American people...
Are you critiquing this random internet person's grammar?
Yes, this random internet person's grammar. If the American people commits... No, people is singular. If the American people commit themselves... No, it's not. It's plural. Never. I said it wrong, but no, it's incorrect. I believe whoever did this, knowing that it might be mentioned on this podcast, deliberately slipped these in here so that I would misread the copy.
I don't know what you're talking about, Kevin.
If the American people commit themselves to completely covering the Martian surface with efficient solar technologies, like, I don't know, phone chargers, we could generate the necessary electrically energy. Electrically energy? Really? Anonymous person?
I don't know.
We could generate the necessary electrically energy. See, if anonymous person had simply read this aloud.
We don't know who it is. How could we get them?
To turn the iron in the Martian core into a powerful electromagnet. Wait. Yeah, so if... Okay, yeah. This person needed way more semicolons, and even then, I think that's just a run-on sentence. Because that's...
Why are we just critiquing the grammar?
If the American people commits itself to completely covering the Martian surface with efficient solar technologies, we could generate necessary electrically energy to turn the iron core and the Martian core into a powerful electromagnet. This would be a first, and in many ways necessary, step toward the human colonization of Mars, the second home we'll someday know.
So we should mention where this block of, well, apparently wrongly written text came from. So this is a official petition to get the U.S. Congress to devote the entirety...
This is a petition to get the U.S. government to urge the U.S. Congress.
Yeah, so there's some bureaucracy. It's on the... You can go and sign this petition. It's publicly available on whitehouse.gov.
I will not be putting this in the show notes.
Okay, petitions.whitehouse.gov/petition/reboot-Martian-magnetosphere.
I'm shocked that was available.
What was available?
That short link. Well done, anonymous person.
Yes. So I found this the other day, and at the time of recording, the number of petitions there is just 99,999 more signatures required before some portion of the government lets another portion of the government know that they should devote the entirety of the budget to covering the Martian surface with solar panels.
Created by AB on July 28, 2016.
Whoever this...
Presumably C and D have not yet signed.
Right.
So far, there's only one signature.
Yeah.
I pledge.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that I pay tax dollars to support this sort of thing.
Yes. I mean, someone somewhere is running the server to host this wonderful petition created by some brilliant...
some lone hero.
Some lone
sadly
hero.
Unrecognized.
Yes.
Now, I am curious. I don't know... obviously, we have no idea who submitted this, but Alex, I don't know if you've ever tried to create one of these. When it says we the people ask the federal government to call on Congress to act on an issue,
yeah,
is that something that's automatically inserted in there, or is it a suggested thing that's editable?
I don't know. I've never created one. I mean, it very well may be editable. I don't know.
Okay. Because it just seems like we the people, which is not the people, it's the whoever signed the petition, on behalf of the people, ask the government to act on their behalf, to ask Congress to ask Congress to act on their behalf.
It does seem like a bit of an unsustainable chain that really wouldn't do anything. I agree.
This is what I'm saying.
But the question is, why does it still only have one signature? Like, why haven't you signed this, Kevin?
Well, I was going to ask you the same question. Presumably AB has. If you're so in support of this, I don't know why you haven't thrown your weight behind it.
I don't know. I don't know if you're allowed to sign your own petition.
Oh.
I think like the act of creating the petition is a thing. So yeah, I have signed it, which is the one petition.
You're the one signature. Okay,
right. I don't believe that the person who created it has.
Got it. Okay. Poor AB comes up with such a brilliant plan. So run me through this.
Okay. That seems like a brilliant plan to me.
So I mean, just cover the planet in solar panels. Out of curiosity, because I'm sure being so firmly in support of this, you vetted this idea before sharing it out. Yeah. So I'm just going to ask you, as the closest that we have on this podcast to an expert about this proposal.
Yep.
So how much solar energy would be reaped if you were able to cover the entirety of Mars with solar panels?
Well, that would be the surface area of Mars multiplied by some coefficient, which is the effectiveness of the solar technology multiplied by the power per square meter of energy impacted by the sun.
Yes.
So, some number. It's probably pretty big. It seems big enough to be able to run a giant electromagnet that we turn the core into.
Okay. And the idea here is that you want a magnetic field such that, protection from solar rays and that sort of thing.
Well, right. You see, that was one of this particular proposition, and whoever created this genius, clearly, came along. And a long time ago, Mars used to have a fairly nice atmosphere, and it had a fairly nice magnetosphere, which protected the atmosphere from ionization from solar winds. And once the atmosphere was ionized, the solar winds just kind of just completely destroyed the atmosphere. And so now there's basically nothing left on Mars.
Right.
So Elon Musk and a couple other people have proposed different ways of rebuilding the atmosphere. But until this petition, I've never seen any proposed solutions to rebuilding the Martian magnetosphere, which without would basically be a waste of resources to rebuild the atmosphere. Because if we rebuild the atmosphere, the solar winds are just going to re-ionize it and destroy it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the best proposal I've seen so far to reboot the Martian magnetosphere.
Okay, so out of curiosity, just because it's been a while since I've really studied my physics, does this electromagnet, though, it's not a rebooting, it's more of a constantly maintaining type of thing? Well,
yes, I suppose, right. But
so this is not like because Elon Musk's whole let's nuke Mars idea, which was equally hilarious, was really a hey, if we nuke it, then it will put it into a state such that it decays, that it's more stable for a long period of time. This proposal would not be like, oh look, now there's a magnetosphere, we can take all the solar panels, put them away for a while, and we'll be good for a couple 100,000 years. This is a let's put them there and then just keep them on and keep replacing them all the time type of plan, right?
Well, so the answer to that actually would require more in-depth study into the Martian core.
Oh no, I should read the copy again, but it doesn't ask for study. This is already proposed, so presumably that's already been researched.
Okay, so but the thing is that covering it in solar panels would be true whether or not it's self-sustaining after the initial boot up. Because if the Martian core has solidified, and so it's a solid iron core, that would be the reason why the magnetosphere has collapsed.
Okay, but if that's the case, then nuking Mars would fix that as well.
Well, no, it wouldn't. It would be the surface of Mars. Running high amounts of electric current through it generated by the solar system could melt. No.
You nuke Mars and then you basically built an insulation layer. Because the reason that because the core has cooled to a solid form because it's evaporated all of its heat outward. It doesn't have to do that. Then you're good.
That's not. Cores are many thousands of degrees hot, Kevin. The atmosphere hasn't.
I'm not talking like a tiny nuke. I'm talking like.
Maybe, but I mean, go ahead and write your own petition. I'm going to support this one. I think whoever wrote this one really has it because it covers both cases. Because potentially the Martian core has not solidified. It is still in a liquid form. It's just not in the precise configuration it needs to generate an electromagnetic field. It's perhaps not turbulent enough.
Right.
In which case, running an electric field through the molten iron would generate an electric field, but it would only be generated for the amount of time that you were passing the current through it.
Right.
However, if the core has solidified, running that much current through a solid iron core could remelt it.
Right.
And then it would be a jump start, so to speak. So once the molten core was running, it would stay molten for, a certain amount of time.
But even if you wanted to create a big electromagnet, it'd be exponentially more efficient to power that with nuclear technology. Especially if you're bringing nukes there to heat the surface up anyway.
Nuclear technology, well, obviously the solar panels aren't going to be 100% efficient. They'll get quite warm.
Right.
And they won't reflect any heat back. Like red will reflect a lot of heat back out into space. But more than black would, obviously. so they'll heat up. Like black will absorb all the solar radiation from the entire spectrum and convert a certain percentage of that spectrum into electrical energy to reboot the magnetosphere. So it's sort of a killing two birds with one stone. You have to cover the whole planet because you can't just have the magnetosphere turn off at night because that would be dumb. Okay.
What about during eclipses?
Well, so you might need some capacitor banks, but...
and what happens when Phobos and Deimos, their orbits decay and they crater into very expensive solar panels?
I haven't seen any write-ups on that. I mean, I've really only seen this one paragraph that this one guy wrote.
Well, and
I'm extrapolating everything out of that. Yeah, whoever wrote this, they were probably just writing it on their phone on their walk home or something. When,
really? Okay.
Yeah, I can only imagine that's where some weird inconsistency
reading
in the grammar.
it did call to mind just what type of person and in what sort of environment would come up with such an idea.
I agree. I still think they're a genius, but they're an unknown.
I wasn't saying they weren't. I was just saying it does make one wonder.
They are an unknown genius.
Oh man! So yes, if you're in favor of rebooting the Martian magnetosphere, well, also I don't like the idea that the Earth is doomed, and B, Mars is our only hope.
You don't like the idea that the Earth is doomed? I don't think anyone does, but you just kind of have to accept it.
No, I mean, I don't like the idea that it's a foregone conclusion either.
Okay, so how are you going to keep the Earth around forever? What's your plan?
I'm not saying forever, no. Though, if we're talking about those sorts of timescales, then yeah, let's reboot the Martian magnetosphere in a few billion years. Like, let's just hold off until solar panel technologies are a little bit cheaper, like a few billion years cheaper.
I'm worried about a comment that we haven't noticed yet. I'm sure the writer is too. But that's one of the reasons that I'm so in favor of this petition, is that, if a comet just came out of nowhere and destroyed the planet, not that I'm saying it's going to necessarily happen.
That instead of asking the people to ask the federal government to call on Congress to act on an issue, you could just, get your telescope and start looking.
Yeah, but comets can come out of nowhere. Like, what if a wormhole opens up? A wormhole could open up. This is not like
quantum tunneling comets, Alex.
A whole comet could quantum tunnel. It is theoretically possible.
It is theoretically
and you
possible.
don't want to be prepared
for... The heat death of the universe will happen first, but it is theoretically possible.
Not necessarily. Not if you accept the notion of the multiverse theory. So...
Right, but even then, won't happen in our universe.
I disagree. It could happen. You can't rule it out.
All right. So yes, if you're interested in supporting this quite remarkable petition to reboot the Martian magnetosphere,
I still don't get why you haven't signed it, Kevin.
Frankly, I do not accept the idea that, well, so for one, this is a whitehouse.gov, so it's your voice in the White House. I do not accept the jurisdiction of the White House, the federal government, or Congress on Mars. I don't think we have any business on Mars. In fact, I do disagree in principle with the idea of us of the law that we passed granting companies the right to mine asteroids. I don't think that's something that the United States has the right to do, or even more importantly, should have the right to do.
I mean, it's kind of just like a signal that you won't get any trouble from us. Like, if they were trying to ban it, I would agree with you. But I think they're just mostly saying it down in their books that they're not making any claims. I guess
we will not. Yeah, you won't get in trouble. It's fine.
Yeah.
I mean that'd be fine. But yeah, just I don't know. Asserting that companies have a right seems like, well, that's not anybody's. Because of course and it becomes a big challenging thing because a whole bunch of different countries have different philosophies about where rights inherently come from. Like whether they come from just existing and then they're manifested through the government, or whether they come from the Queen who gets them from God and then distributes them to Parliament who gives them all out to people, and or they come from the dictator of the week or whatever.
Or they could come from the comets and asteroids themselves, which would be somewhat paradoxical.
Right. But yeah, so I don't think it's something that the U.S. has a. It's not a thing.
But you won't sign it as a favor to me?
Well, I mean, no, certainly not without
support of this anonymous stranger.
Besides, that's the thing is that I don't know this anonymous person's agenda. They could be using this as some sort of scheme to claim sovereignty on Mars. They'll be like, hey, I own all the solar panels.
Yeah, but he stayed anonymous, so how would you make an anonymous claim to own everything?
Well, you say anonymous now, but all of a sudden we start shipping a whole bunch of solar panels.
I don't see a way of him verifying his identity in the future.
I don't know. NSA, I imagine, probably can figure out who logged into whitehouse.gov. I imagine that's probably something they can pull off.
I don't know. I don't know. That seems rather dubious to me.
Okay, we should move on from this story.
Really? It's clearly the best story of the week.
It's clearly the only story of the week. Well, no, I take that back because you found one.
I did.
I don't think we have to. So this is a fear of mine, is that now that I'm discovering that people are going back and listening to the podcast like from the beginning, I get terrified. Like maybe we talked briefly about something a year ago and I'm just going to repeat myself. But for somebody else, it'll be like, oh yeah, you said that, and they heard it recently. I guess that's part of the trouble with podcasts.
I bet, every podcast does that. I've been binging through some podcasts lately, and yeah, that happens all the time.
I think we need to get like I'd love to have like just a manager person who just does the show notes and then it's like the continuity editor type of person. Just the person who's like, oh, no, you talked about that. And be like, oh, yeah. And we could say like, as I said on blah, blah, blah.
We just have to be able to call them up. They'd have to have a perfect memory of all our podcasts.
Well, yeah, exactly. No, we'd just hook them in as we're recording and then they could just type texty stuff at us. It'd be brilliant.
Okay. Well, I'll put out an application.
But okay, so you shared this story, and I'm just going to quote a paragraph at random because you didn't grab a pull quote for me.
Nope.
So this is a quote regarding the Soylent CEO, which I suppose we should talk about. But first, I'm going to quote this. So since this is from the LA Times, since Alex is very hipstery lately, well, because you went to Alaska by way of LAX. Anyway, since Reinhardt installed what prosecutors call an experimental living facility earlier this year, it has become an eyesore, covered in graffiti and strewn with trash, located on a popular walking destination in Monticello Heights known as Flat Top. The site has angered neighbors concerned about appearance, safety, and security. So, yeah, he has built a stupid house.
What? So we should start somewhere, and we should start at tiny homes. Have you ever thought about living in a tiny home, Kevin?
I have thought about living. I lived in a tiny home in New York. It was squished into a tiny building.
Yeah, but you didn't build it.
No, God, no.
Part of the appeal of a tiny home, and what I mean by a tiny home is basically a small tractor trailer that you can pull with a truck or something.
Right. That
is your entire home. And part of the appeal is building it yourself. So it's like this fully customized, like tiny, like one room house.
I'm gonna, because I've seen a lot of sort of prefab tiny homes. There is a market for this. That it's part of it is that, yeah, people want them as like this chic thing that they built. But then there is part of it that people are like, I want to live super green, or I want to live super cheap, and I think I can probably get away with it because zoning laws. But
I suppose there are people who have legitimate reasons and aren't just trying to be imitators to own a tiny home without building it yourself, which is clearly the coolest part.
I have thought about building a tiny home. I will never do it.
Yeah, but it's like this like one room thing with like you put bunk beds and like you can get kind of complex with it, and maybe sometimes they'll have like a bathroom and like partitions that you can slide around, and they're just really cool.
Because there's nothing more fun than living in like a 5-foot square area that includes your bathroom, your bedroom, your kitchen.
Yeah, but it's like vertical. So like
this is
square,
what caused
but it's
the
like
Black Plague, Alex. Not enough separation between bathrooms and kitchens. This is what caused everything bad in the history of the world, was just failure to separate bathrooms and kitchens.
I'm not sure that rose to the Star Trek Into Darkness movie.
What's that?
I'm not sure that's what caused the Star Trek Into Darkness movie.
Okay. There's some very rare exceptions. But
okay. All right. Okay, anyway. So this was a guy who was like, I want a tiny home, but I don't want to be able to really move it that easy, and I want it to be slightly bigger. So he bought a shipping crate. So, like when people ship things across the ocean, they have those container ships full of like all these like red and green and blue containers.
Yep.
So this guy who's the CEO of Soylent, which we should touch on in a moment, because I hate Soylent.
I should also mention that Tom Scott has a fantastic video about those shipping containers and how cool it is how that they are standardized.
Because you can do all these things with them.
Exactly. You can just be like, oh, it's an iPhone? No, it's a bunch of iPhones that are in the shape of a shipping container. And we can just we can build stuff that works with shipping containers. It's a bunch of umbrellas? No, it's a shipping container. Like, it doesn't matter what it is you're shipping, and it's amazing. Yeah. And he goes to this place where they've got all these crazy cranes and stuff. I will link that in the show notes for people who want to.
Yeah, it's always fascinated me that you can just like pull it off a ship and then like stick it to like a slim framework that is a truck, and now you have like the thing on a truck.
Right.
And like now you've gone from land to, or from sea to land, or vice versa. Anyway, so he just took one of those and he like stuck some windows and a door in it and like a bed and stuck it on the side of a mountain in LA. And now he's living in it, or he was living in it. He's been arrested, I guess.
Okay.
Because he refused to move it even after he was ordered to. And I mean, that's not the story. It's just, I think it's very interesting that you could live in a shipping crate, and I kind of want to live in a shipping crate now.
Well, I just don't like the idea of, I don't know. I mean, part of this is just libertarian property right BS, but just why neighborhood associations irritate me on principle.
I've never been a part or had any interaction.
Well, we've never owned property, so
correct.
We're not exactly the best people.
I own property in theory, maybe. I don't know. But no, I have no neighborhood association.
But in just about everywhere, there are some sorts of rules about what you can and can't put on your property. New
Hampshire, live free or die.
Well, yeah. Yeah, so maybe your state will be the exception, or your former state, I should say. But no. So like, why do the neighbors get a vote in this? Close your own drapes and then don't look at it. I mean, I can understand that. Yes, you have a vested interest because it drives down property prices for your house and stuff. But it just, I don't know. It bothers me on principle. Like, yes, this is a stupid idea.
I don't know.
But no, build it like a mile outside of Vegas and nobody will care. Like, build.
But that would be, imagine like the commute. It's awful. You want a nice hilltop shipping container to live in.
Yeah, the commute in Vegas is terrible. But LA, no, that's perfect. We'll just put everything in LA.
Everything in LA.
Yeah.
And everyone's happy. Also, could you imagine how hot a shipping container a mile outside of Las Vegas would get? When you're up in the mountains, it's going to be cooler.
Maybe. I don't know. Idea. Well, because there's so much of those green homes and stuff that are like half built into very small things. If you made this like a subterranean deal, like deserts get cold at night, man. So I don't know.
That's true.
I don't know. It's possible you could make it work.
I mean, I definitely think you could make it work, and I think you would make it look really good. It literally just looks like he took a Sawzall and cut a couple holes in a shipping container.
Which, yeah, there are some photos in this article there's one photo. It just looks bad.
Like, I understand the complaints, but it got me thinking that would be a really interesting project.
What was that one old TV show at the junkyard? Sanford and Son?
I was thinking of the first episode of Doctor Who, because that's an old TV show.
Oh, fair enough. Okay. But yeah, I suppose, we should touch on Soylent. Because I don't know, have we talked about Soylent at all on the show?
I think we have, yes.
Did we?
Yes.
I was pretty sure we hadn't.
But we definitely haven't since I've tried it.
If you would like to be our continuity manager, please write in and let us know.
I really do think we touched on it very briefly, but
possibly
we could just search this document for Soylent and see if
probably. Well, we did not used to do a good job of keeping good show notes before.
Oh, okay. Well, never mind.
But okay.
Anyway,
so share your thoughts about. Well, first explain what Soylent is, and then share your thoughts.
Okay, so Soylent is a meal replacement drink. So it has like a third of all of the protein and all of the nutrients and all of the carbohydrates and all of the fats that you're supposed to eat in a day. And so theoretically, if you drink 3 of them in a day, you would have all of the nutrients and calories and things you would need to live. And this is all calibrated towards like the average human.
Right.
So, it would vary by person. You'd have to dial it in. You'd talk to a
so there are different
nutritionist.
products as well. So like you don't, depending, like if you're doing the powder stuff, then a bag is 2,000 calories. And I don't know what the bottles are. I think they're 500 calories each.
Yeah, the bottles are 500 calories.
So I think if you were going to if you do 100%, you're supposed to drink 4 a day.
Oh, okay.
And you're certainly supposed to go through a bag a day if you're doing the powder stuff.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, when I was thinking about using them, and until I got one and tasted it, I was going to do 3 a day, but that's just because I was targeting a lower calorie content because I was in a weight loss cycle. But yeah,
I love that because 2,000 calories for me, like that is like starvation. Like that is very much a weight loss level of calories.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Yeah. Like weight loss is an interesting subject, which is almost as divisive as politics.
Right. Exactly. Oh man. So anyway, back on Soylent, what did you get and what did you try? And then
I got these I got a case on Amazon of these bottles.
Okay.
500 calorie. It's like Soylent 2.0, I believe.
Yep.
And I really, really wanted to like them, and I really, really wanted to be able to like not use them religiously, but to like have the case because they stay good for a year or 2.
No, they do not.
Yes, they do.
I mean, if you don't mind the mold.
The mold? They have like a 1-year expiration date.
Well, I mean, it depends. Part of the thing is that the company has had problems with shipping, and particularly with their distributors not shipping first in, first out.
Lovely.
So like there are definitely like people who get shipments. They're like, oh, this expires next month. Great. And there are 30 of them or, whatever. And
it doesn't matter because I won't ever drink them ever again anyway, because they taste disgusting to me.
Well,
but in theory, I really like it. Just like, oh, I'm busy today. I have a busy day. I want to just grab this and not have to worry about one meal for today.
So how long did you try it for? How long did you stick with it?
1/2 of one meal.
Okay, well, yeah, that.
And when I was fairly certain I was going to throw up if I drank any more, I knew I was done.
Well, so I haven't tried 2.0. Okay. I did the powder for a while, and it was actually incredibly helpful for me. And Soylent is a controversial thing because people have this whole attitude about, eating real food. There's also been some stuff about the heavy metal content in some of their recipes. There's been stuff about cleanliness of their facilities, and it's a big controversial thing. But much in the way that like e-cigarettes are a big controversial thing, where I was like, you know what, let me just try it. And if I can stick with it, it's better than what I'm eating now. Right. Yeah. Like, so it's not going to be worse. It was incredibly helpful for me just in the sense that I never, I was hungry a lot, but I removed the decision of what to eat. It was never I'm feeling kind of hungry. I could make food, but I don't generally do that. Or I could order food. Yeah. Why don't I order? Well, what do I want to order? And spend time thinking about different types of food. And then you get hyped up. You're like, oh, I want this or I want that. And then you end up ordering more of whatever you end up deciding on because you spent all this time fantasizing about food. Having just a Soylent is like, oh, I'm just not going to think about food at all today. And just know, like, I have this pitcher and I'm just going to, be done with the pitcher by the time the day is out.
So you just make a 1-day pitcher supply.
Yep.
And then just drink that slowly over the day?
Yep.
Did you add anything to it? Or did you do it straight?
So I did. So, yeah, I mean, like you, the first day was not a great taste. Though I believe 2.0 is sweeter than the powder was.
I did not experience that, but okay.
I mean, it's not quite pancake. It's not quite like pancake batter, but
no, I could drink pancake batter. I could not drink this. I
mean, but it did take probably a week of drinking to get used to. Also, did Did you drink it after it had been refrigerated?
Yes.
Okay. Because, yeah, that was another thing, is if I drank the stuff room temperature, it was iffy.
Yeah.
But no, so I did discover, though, that one of the additional complaints with kind of previous versions of Soylent was that people had gastro issues. So what they had done is basically in their more recent recipe is they had taken out a ton of fiber. That in turn ended up causing me gastro issues, so I added fiber back in. But that was, other than that, so basically I would mix up a bag of it and then add some psyllium powder, and then just stir that up and then put it in the fridge the night before, and was losing a lot of weight, doing very well for a long while on that. Though it did get to the point where if it was not the sort of thing that I would have enjoyed using as a like, oh, I'm just going to do this instead of breakfast. Because then it doesn't really serve the purpose. Like for me, what I needed it to do was just get me to not think about food at all.
Okay. I mean, that's fair. Yeah, I could never live on this stuff. I think my philosophy about food falls somewhere in the middle of a fuel versus a thing, like an enjoyment. Because I know a lot of people, especially like sports active people, only think about food as a fuel source, and it is.
Right.
But a lot of people also base a lot of like, for their birthday, they'll go out to dinner with some friends, and like it's built into the culture, and like they derive enjoyment directly from either the preparing or consuming of food.
Right.
And I feel like I fall in between. So like I could see eating some of my meals, like that would be perfect. It would alleviate, and I could concentrate my efforts on like a few really good meals instead of like having to just split up my time and my work across a large number of them.
Well, I mean, and so I'm trying to basically do what Soylent did for me with meal prep stuff that I've been doing recently. I'm just trying to prep everything on a Sunday for the whole week and just make, it's going to be 7 of the same thing, but then I'm never going like, oh, which of these should I eat? It's just, I'm going to pop things. I grab something out of the freezer, put it in the fridge, grab the thing in the fridge, put it in the microwave, grab the thing out of the microwave and eat it. And just kind of having that, like, it's never a question. It's never something that I think about or debate, because it's just a matter of trying to reduce the amount of times that I have to choose to be healthy.
Right. And I almost wish I could buy something at the store like that. Like it was a freshly cooked 7-week, like not like frozen food, but like a freshly cooked 7 meal pack.
Right.
Because that would be perfect.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, I've thought about going through and doing that for lunches in specific. I never do it. I don't think I'd ever do it for dinners, and I don't think I'd ever do it for more than one meal in a week. But like, just being able to concentrate on a subset of meals in a week, like I generally eat 14 meals in a week. I don't eat breakfast. I know some people say that's terrible, but like I get up at 9 o'clock and I usually have lunch around 11:30. It's just like, it's extra calories I don't need in the morning. And I've never had any trouble getting up in the morning, and I'm just not hungry for that.
But your metabolism.
Yeah, calories in, calories out.
No, that's false.
Physics.
Atkins.
Physics.
Keto. Caveman. Paleo. Gluten.
If I exert so many units of work, that energy has to come from somewhere. Unless I'm somehow a perpetual motion machine. Well,
though I do sort of wonder if, because that was always the thing that kind of confused me when people did talk about, well, no, it's not always strictly that. Then I did sort of wonder, like, well, yeah, what is, like, let's take it as a hypothesis that it's not calories in, calories out. What is the difference then if I do the same amount of work and eat different food that's the same calories? What, if we were to take that as the assumption, what would be the difference? And I started to think, maybe, you know how, like, the brain uses up a ton of glucose? And particularly that the glucose levels spike during particular things, like when we're exerting a lot of self-control, for example.
Yes.
So does that maybe mean that, like, if when we are not losing weight, it's because our brains are being lazy too? That's like, so, or that, well, I mean, because it's just, you know, if the argument of calories in, calories out is false, then it means that your body is doing something differently somehow
Yes.
And if you're keeping the same amount of activity, that means there's something different happening in your brain that you're in your body that you're not measuring. I'm like wondering, like, well, maybe that's just like your brain's glucose level. So maybe it means that you don't have the same amount. I don't know. I'd be interested to know like what the theory is behind. How do you deal with the physics part of it? If you get that argument,
I just treat it as a black box. The body is a black box,
right?
If I know that I'm expending at least a certain level of calories in a day, and I know that I only intake a certain number of calories a day, and I know that the amount I take in is less than the amount I put out, that energy has to come from somewhere.
Well, right, but the problem is the unmeasured expenditure.
I just count that as extra loss.
I mean, well, right, no, but I'm just saying, like, theoretically, if you spent an entire day doing complex multiplication problems,
yes,
versus an entire day watching TV, theoretically, you'd probably see a measurable difference in calorie expenditure. That's not something we track, though. And it's not even really something we can track. I mean, eventually, I guess in the aggregate, you can look at your weight, but...
Right. I mean, but that makes sense because you're well, it depends on what you're doing.
So, math for weight loss. Woo!
You could argue
we should start a 12-step program.
You're reducing entropy, and the only way to reduce entropy is by inputting energy. So, there you go. Right? You're ordering unordered numbers. That's right. Running a sorting algorithm in your head. So just run and search and sort all day. On a deck of cards.
But which sorting algorithm?
In search and sort, because that works well with cards. So just take a deck of cards, shuffle them up.
But is it really a question of which works best? Shouldn't it be a question of which increases the most which causes the most calorie expenditure?
So I would call that round the world sort.
Which is
where you take a card, you run around the world. And then you put it in the place it goes. And you take the next card, you run around the world, and you put it in the place that it goes.
Right.
And then you take and then you repeat. You keep turning that crank.
Yes.
Yeah.
Although now I would be actually fascinated to know. Like, so you have this idea. So there are a bunch of different ways to sort things, which we've sort of been alluding to. There are a bunch of different systems for sorting things, and it matters a lot for computers in terms of there are some things that take a lot of disk space to do, and there are some things that are very fast but take... and you're dealing
with... Which one uses the most energy?
Well, no, this is my question is that if we were to have a human sort cards using these things and then measure their blood glucose levels, would those track with computers' expenditure?
I'm going to go ask MIT. Would they be the
same or would it be completely different?
I'm going to submit that proposal to MIT. I'll be back.
Why? We should just do it ourselves.
No,
we don't need funding. This is a pretty easy.
I need it in at MIT so I can research their secret EM drive labs.
I think this would be a fascinating thing to look at.
I agree, but I also think it's the perfect in to get in on the lower levels of MIT. I've only been on the upper floors.
Oh man.
Anyway, Kevin, you've written some interesting things at the end of these show notes about all the things which you hate.
I hate things, Alex. I have been valiantly trying very, very hard for the last 48 minutes to not be super crabby. I'm
recording 49 minutes, so maybe your time is off.
What's that?
I'm showing 49 minutes, so I think your time may be off.
Oh my God, freaking computers, man. I've been making a valiant effort. This has been a bad day. So
why?
Well, so let me tell you a story.
All right, I'll settle in for story time.
This is a story about little Kevin who liked to play computer games in his parents' basement when he was like 5.
Okay.
And he started because his dad would play Apogee DOS games, which used the control and alt keys and the arrow keys. And Kevin would sit on his lap and use the other control and alt keys at the same time, which thinking back on it must have pissed Kevin's dad off so much because, oh my God, how much would you hate that?
I don't know, never playing that game, but it sounds pretty annoying.
No, but imagine playing any game and having someone else also have a controller plugged in.
Yes. Yep.
But anyway, Kevin eventually started to play games on his own, and eventually started to mess around with computers on his own, because computers back then sometimes died or failed or whatever, and we had tons of spare computers because they kept dying or failing or whatever.
Well, I wouldn't call them spares. I called them junk.
No, broken junk, yes. But Kevin eventually used to really enjoy pulling the computers apart and going like, oh, well, the floppy drive's broken on this one, and maybe sometimes he'd even be able to fix the floppy drive. But if he couldn't, sometimes he'd be able to get a floppy drive out of a junk thing and put it into a regular thing, and everything would work wonderfully.
I know that well.
And and he figured out what all the ribbon cables went into. Sometimes he plugged them into the wrong ports, and sometimes that didn't end too well, but that was fine because there was always another motherboard in some old machine that wasn't working.
Yep.
And it was a wonderful, happy time for Kevin.
Yeah, I had a very similar experience. I used to go to the dump and just get old computers. There was a big cardboard box people would throw their old electronics into.
So we fast forward now to high school.
Okay.
And Kevin is still doing the same thing. A lot of it now, not so much high school, but middle school, and then I guess maybe into high school. Kevin's parents decided Kevin's spending a lot of time on the computer. Okay. We should put things like net nanny monitoring software and stuff on those computers.
Okay.
Kevin, of course, realized, though, that when you have a Windows 3 floppy disk and a Windows 95 upgrade set of 14 floppy disks and a Windows 98 upgrade CD, then you could install it on any hard drive. And so it doesn't matter if you put NetNanny on one hard drive when you can simply swap out the hard drives.
And have another operating system.
Have a fully functional computer. So these antics continued, and occasionally stuff would break, but then Kevin would play around with it, and eventually it'd get fixed. And then Kevin discovered Linux. Because
sounds like a wonderful time.
Kevin had a friend called Will and discovered, oh my gosh, there were so many cool things you could do with Linux. There were crazy 3D visual things you could do, but also there was the command line, which is something that you just kind of avoided as much as you could back in Windows land, because generally it meant something had gone terribly wrong.
Yep.
And Kevin loved Linux, and he got so excited. He customized things, and he started messing around with his screen RCs and his Vim RCs and all of the RC files. And he installed rat poison window managers so that everything could be tiled and crazy and insane, and it was brilliant. And he loved this, and he loved configuring things. And so he spent time. He would spend an entire weekend configuring something, and then decide, he didn't like that distro, and he'd wipe the entire thing and reinstall something else the next week.
The crazy college days of experimentation.
Exactly. No, this wasn't even college. This is still high school.
Wow.
Then Kevin gets into college, and there's no longer a huge ass basement full of spare computer parts to play with.
Okay.
So he dual boots Linux and Windows for a while, because that's kind of the best that you can do. Because sometimes you need Windows so that you can run Microsoft Office, because professors will email docx things that can't be opened at the time in free software.
Well, this is why you needed to go find the computer club on campus.
Well, and Kevin would sign up for the Electronic Frontier Foundation and GNU newsletters and stuff, and be mad at professors who use proprietary formats and all of that wonderful stuff.
Okay.
But eventually, Kevin saw the light, and it was amazing, because he discovered when he started programming in Ruby that there was a new way to do things, and that was to use a Linux that worked for everything for the most part.
Had Microsoft Word.
And this was called the Mac operating system. Particularly, it was called OS X.
Yeah.
And it was amazing, because he could do all of his wonderful Linuxy things, but also the Wi-Fi wouldn't just stop working for no reason.
Yep. And you could run Microsoft Word.
And you could get a sound card that worked.
But it presumably had one installed.
Exactly. You didn't even have to worry about that.
It's a lovely story, Kevin.
We fast forward to today. And Kevin is sick of Apple.
Oh, no. What?
Kevin is very tired of Apple and all of its Kevin's really tired of this whole, you can't customize any of your tech. You have to use all these specified things. He wants to be able to play games. It's 2016, and the thing still can't play games.
Wait. Let me question. You just uploaded a new Cheers Kevin game video. What operating system did you play that game you were playing on that channel?
I refuse to answer because it doesn't further the narrative of the story.
Okay.
So,
what amendment is that? What are you pleading?
So we're at the point now where Kevin is very frustrated because he wants to be able to play games, and in particular, he wants to be able to play games at a high enough quality that he can put them on YouTube and do wonderful things. He wants to be able to, I mean, in a perfect world, he even go back to Linux. He's very frustrated with the fact that every time that Apple gets some idea, they push out this update that overrides all of Kevin's configs and ruins his entire machine, doesn't let him customize anything, keeps adding additional visual effects that just slow everything down. So you can't switch desktops, you can't full screen applications without it being slow and annoying and terrible.
Okay.
And if Kevin could just go to Linux, but also play video games and run, I don't know, the Adobe suite, or ideally Final Cut Pro, but find the Adobe suite, then that's what Kevin would do. And Kevin would be so happy. It'd be amazing. But Kevin can't do that. So what does Kevin do? He goes, well, I'm frustrated with Apple, and I'm in the position of going, I need a machine that I can do these video things on, I can do these game things on. And, well, I can't just rely on Linux to do that, so I guess I've got to go back to my good old buddy Windows.
Your good old buddy Windows.
Yes.
And how's that fling going for you? The rekindling of this relationship going, Kevin?
So I shipped over a PC tower that had initially been a Hackintosh.
Yep.
When I moved here.
Yep. And
I decided, all right, I'm going to actually try and spin this up. I'm going to set it up with multiple monitors. It's going to be great. I'll probably install a Linux VM and do some development and stuff in there.
Yeah, because virtual machines have come a long way since Kevin was in high school.
I figure I'll go ahead and do that. It'll be wonderful. Of course, I open up the box and I discovered that despite the fact that the thing was packaged incredibly well.
Incredibly well.
It was packaged incredibly well. Pretty much everything in there was toast. And the things that weren't toast were suddenly not compatible because Windows. Granted, the materials, were the stuff that was there was not necessarily the stuff I'd have picked. It was more that I wanted to get a Hackintosh, and so I bought stuff that had already been vetted as working for Hackintosh.
Yeah, I remember
I bought a preset, like there's an article that lists all of the things. I will just buy all of the things, and I'll try and do that.
I remember when you sent me that list a few years ago. You had me check it.
It worked for a while. It worked until Apple released enough updates then, and it's like, I can't even figure this out anymore. This is a nightmare.
Yeah, Hackintoshes are something that I've played around with, but I just can't stick with them due to stability. Yeah. Like, you have to basically accept you're not going to update for like a year at a time and then just do like a yearly upgrade.
But that gets problematic when you're dealing with software like Final Cut Pro and stuff where it's locked to the operating system. But anyway, so I open the thing up and I go, oh, it's toast.
Yep.
So, okay. I gotta get a new motherboard because there are some pins that have clipped off on the motherboard, and I'm not gonna try and solder that stuff on because I'm old and I'm sure that I can screw it up, and I'm just not gonna. And besides, it's probably not even decent anymore anyway. So I buy a whole bunch of new stuff. I discovered that some of the new stuff that I bought doesn't work. Fine, I buy replacement new stuff for the new stuff.
Well, hopefully you sent back the other new stuff.
And so I get this thing built and set up, and it's running. And it's pretty good. And I realized that I really need to the graphics card that I thought was fine was not fine anymore.
Right.
So I was like, okay, I'll just run on it. Let me just at least make sure things are working for now. Run things off of the motherboard graphics, and it's great. Mm-hmm. But I go, I really want a good graphics card because I want to do the video game stuff. I want to be able to edit stuff. I want to start working on this machine. And I get the new graphics card. I get a GTX 1080.
Wow, that's the best graphics card. Well, not quite.
It is. It's almost the best graphics card.
It is not the best.
It's the best graphics card. Necks. It helps my narrative if this is just the best graphics card.
Okay.
So it's the best graphics card.
card.
And I'm running a 4.0 gigahertz CPU,
Core i7,
Core i7,
6700K, if I remember correctly.
The best CPU.
Not the
Ask
best.
anybody. My CPU's
very good.
Better than anybody's CPU.
Probably the best 4-core CPU out there.
And I have 64 gigabytes of DDR4, which is apparently the number that we're on now. Crazy fast RAM.
Yeah, something like 3000 megahertz.
You know the specs way better than I do. Because I'm just like, does it plug in? Yeah, okay, it fits the slot. It's fine.
I mean,
and everything's running off of some SSDs, which is great. I'll eventually.
How many SSDs?
It's running off of 2. I have one that's the OS and one that's other stuff for now until I set up a RAID.
Cool.
And it's on a 650. It's on the PSU that I had from before, 650 watts, and it's from 2014, so it's not super old. Shouldn't be dying or anything.
Well, I mean, it sounds like a very traumatic journey.
Well, and everything was running fine. And in fact, I had 2 monitors set up because I got the GPU plugged in and I was super excited. Got 2 monitors set up. I was like, ooh, now I've got 2 monitors side by side, which I hadn't had in a very long time. Because whenever I'd been doing it with my MacBook where, the monitors don't really match up. But I had 2 monitors that were the same type of monitor that were side by side. I'm like, I'm going to launch like American Truck Simulator, Euro Truck Simulator, a bunch of video games and be like, what's it like when it's stretched out?
And it immediately crashes.
No, it was really cool. Problem with Euro Truck Simulator, though, is that then it's going to split it right in the middle of the road where you
so
don't...
you need 3 monitors.
Right, so I need 3 monitors. This is the problem. So today, a 3rd monitor comes in.
Uh-oh.
And so that's thing 1 that happens today. So the machine's been running wonderfully fine. Thing 1 is I get a new monitor come in, and so I can have 3 monitors. Thing 2 is I try and launch Premiere Pro to edit a video.
Oh no.
So somehow between these 2 things, I'm keeping an eye on time because I don't want to. I don't know how good my storytelling skills are. And now we're getting more into the tech support part of this story.
Okay.
So the result of these 2 things, 1 is that I try and launch Premiere Pro, which is Premiere Pro Creative Commons 2015.03 or 0.3. So the 3rd update to the 2015 release.
Okay.
So I go ahead and launch it. And Windows tells me an unknown error occurred.
Good. That's a solvable error.
Exactly. So I go, Cortana, explain. Of course, I don't have a mic plugged into the computer, so it doesn't help.
Good.
There's no button to tell me what happened.
Yeah.
I'm just left to die in a fire somewhere.
Well, okay, so it lit a fire. So Adobe Premiere literally lit a fire and left you to die in it.
No.
Oh, okay.
But that is presumably what it was implying by that error message.
Right, yes. I'm sure that it had extremely hostile intentions.
So an unknown error occurred is my favorite kind of error message because it means, as I believe I tweeted once, so I'm plagiarizing myself a little bit, what it means is we don't have a user experience team and our developers suck. That is what that message translates to mean. It's business speak for that.
So, so I also don't like using an unknown error. So recently I've started doing web development, and so I've discovered the lovely things called HTTP error codes.
Yes.
And do you know what the error code I like to use the most is?
Can you guess?
One? Yes, it is the teapot one. So if I don't know what error message to return, whether it's success, whether it's failure, or if I have no idea what like the status of the data is or anything, like I'll return error code. I think it's 418.
I think you're right.
And error code 418, unlike 404, which means file not found, error code 418 means I am a teapot.
Yes.
I was just put into the HTTPML or HTTP error codes for the fun of it. And I love that error. I wish everything just gave 418 errors instead of unknown errors.
So I get this unknown error, and I go, all right. Well, because here's the thing. If you have an unknown error, what that means is an actual error happened, but it was too complicated. And so some developer somewhere wrote some software that sees that error, dismisses that error, and tells you that some error happened.
Right.
Probably because they feel that you seeing the error will be useless to you. And perhaps rightly so.
Perhaps, but in a professional grade tool.
Like, Google the error. Now, strangely enough, if you try and Google an unknown error occurred, the results that you get back are less than heartening.
So what you need to do is you need to watch the execution stack trace of your entire computer in real time.
So here's what I did. I figured out, okay, I'm going to run this in administrator mode.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, fancy.
Not something the thing told me to do. Not something that's even particularly intuitive, but just something that I tried. Because that's what 5-year-old Kevin would have done. He'd have just tried something stupid and seen if it worked.
Yep.
It didn't.
Nope.
But it did start printing out error messages, error files to the desktop.
Okay.
Which is weird, but I guess, all right, that's good. That's good. It tells me something. And what it tells me is that it's having some problem with the ATI graphics driver.
Oh, you have an NVIDIA GPU.
I don't have that kind of graphics card.
Do you have your hardware encoding settings wrong?
Well, so I went, all right, I'm going to go ahead and update all of my drivers. It turned out that the NVIDIA thing actually had an additional driver component that it could install. It did. Got that all working. Didn't fix the problem.
Okay.
Now, you're right that you can set Premiere to handle that stuff after it launches.
Oh.
But this is crashing before that. And I believe what's happening is that it doesn't like the onboard graphics of the motherboard. That would be my guess.
Just take them off. Take them out.
What I ended up doing is I downloaded Adobe Premiere Pro CC 2015, not 0.3, and that launches just fine. Which is not okay.
Wait. I've actually seen people on Facebook. I've seen Michael Aranda and Derek, or DK, our friend, have both been tweeting and Facebook posting about that particular update to Adobe Premiere, saying they've had all sorts of stupid problems with it.
So that happens, and it loads. But by that time, I've had to upload stuff. So basically, what I've done is I've just transferred the files that I recorded on Windows back over to the Apple world. And edited all the Apple
where everything just works as it should.
But okay, so that's the first part of the story. The second part of the story is that the third monitor comes in, and Kevin is really excited. He's going to hook up 3 monitors, and he's going to have like blinders to the side. So he's going to be able to drive in a big truck in a video game and have side views and be able to not have to turn the camera to see if there's traffic coming over from the left at intersections.
They sell VR headsets for this, Kevin.
No. This is going to be amazing. So Kevin hooks up the 3 monitors and he plugs them in, and they're wonderful. And he goes into the NVIDIA configs and he sets up this stretch config thing so that it's
NVIDIA
one
surrounds,
screen.
Yes.
I don't know. He sets up this thing and it's wonderful. It's this one screen. Windows really doesn't have any idea what to do about this. It's all sorts of confused. It's like popping up the start bar on one screen and then popping it over to another at random intervals because Windows is just terrible. But it's fine because the video games are much better than the Windows operating system they're running on.
Okay.
So Kevin launches this up and it's wonderful. He sees these 3 monitors. He sees the open road. He goes, oh man, this is going to be such a great day.
And then the monitors start randomly flashing and disappearing.
Then Kevin gets an error that says, we uncorrectable error.
We uncorrectable error?
Which definitionally means an error that cannot be resolved.
Correct.
Now, we spelled WHEA.
We
are uncorrectable error. Like if Mario was we are uncorrectable error.
Okay.
So that is an error message. Now, unlike Adobe, this is at least an error message.
Wait, is it?
It is. It's we are _uncorrectable _error. And then the machine reboots, and Kevin goes, all right, well, that's wonderful. I've got a thing. I can go to Google. And what Google says is, it could be anything. It could be that any piece of electronics is pulling just a little too much.
A little too much power.
A little too much power.
Wrong place.
It could be that anything is a little bit overclocked. It could be that there's a bad driver somewhere for some device. So Kevin starts to go through these one by one. He starts unplugging the extra monitors. He thinks, all right, well, maybe, I don't know, maybe the GPU, maybe the DisplayPort cable actually does have some sort of power draw, and that's adding to things. It shouldn't. That'd be ridiculous, but maybe it does. Who knows? And so, okay, we'll go ahead and unplug it because it was working before.
Uh-huh.
And it crashes again. He goes, okay, well, we'll unstretch the displays. And it crashes again with this same we are uncorrectable error. He sometimes gets a different error. Attempted execute of non-execute memory. Which is...
You're trying to buffer overflow yourself.
And then he gets another one called kernel security check failure.
Yeah, you're trying to buffer overflow yourself. You keep destroying the canary.
So now Kevin is down to a single monitor plugged into the GPU that was working just fine yesterday. And Kevin has completely wiped his machine and reinstalled Windows, which should mean also removing all of the drivers. Resetting it to even better than the state it was in before. And before Windows can even finish installing, it announces, "We uncorrectable error."
It's clearly downloading.
And the little Kevin who used to play DOS video games just dies inside.
I'm so sorry, Kevin. I'm so sorry.
It's been a terrible day.
I'm so sorry. But at least you know this podcast isn't going to end talking about Interstellar.